Good morning, everyone. I will call the Cook County Board of Commissioner regular meeting to order on this day, Tuesday, May 26th at 8:30 a.m. We begin our meeting with a pledge. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. Madam Chair, I would ask to pull the grant from the Arrowhead Regional Arts Center from the consent agenda.
Okay, so that's item C. Let's put that, because we have folks here, let's put that under item 4 before we, or highway, before we go into the highway. Okay, thank you on that. Anything else? Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 4, we have a introduction to our Minnesota Regional DNR Director. Administrator Treble.
Thank you. Madam Chair, are we moving past public comment
Public
and doing
comment?
that later?
Oh, sorry.
Do you want to do that first?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay. Do we have anyone here for public comment today? Okay, I do have two items.
Okay.
All right, so the first one is from, or it states, "To the board, my name is Charles Perrin. I own a cabin on Binnegami Lake. I'm writing about the proposed expansion of the Humphrey gravel pit. The application describes a much larger operation. It includes washing, screening, loading, and other equipment. I've heard the pit in the past during limited work. This proposal is different. It would be larger and more constant. The new owner, Matthey Construction Company, operates pits across Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan. The plan would roughly double the size of the pit. It points to steady, ongoing use. The requested hours are up to 13 hours a day, 6 days a week, with possible winter operations if weather allows. That level of activity would create continuous noise. It would affect my ability to use and enjoy my cabin. Sound carries across Binnegami Lake. There is nothing to stop it. Even distant activity can be clearly heard at my property. I ask the board to consider the following: reduce operating hours and days, especially during August. Require meaningful noise mitigation, including a substantial sound barrier at the edge of pit expansions. Set clear limits to help prevent long-term continuous noise impacts on my property. The application does not include an end date. This operation could likely continue for decades. Without stronger conditions, it will create lasting impacts and reduce the use and the enjoyment of my property. I also want to note that over the years, the lake has attracted many more canoeists and fishermen who enjoy the lake because it is relatively so close to town and because it is so quiet and tranquil. I respectfully ask that the board adopt limits and require effective mitigation to prevent undue hardship on my use, enjoyment, and value of my property. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Charles Perrin. Parcel ID 53-220-1300. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I have one more. Dear Commissioners, my name is Susan Schubert, and my family has had a cabin on Binnegami Lake for 60 years. I'm writing to respectfully ask that you consider including some reasonable mitigation measures as the old Humphrey gravel pit starts back up. Also, that you consider continuing to require an annual report and compliance visits. My husband and I have spent the last 4 years renovating our cabin for retirement with work ongoing. It means a great deal to us. We hope to spend that time enjoying the quiet and the setting that brought my family here in the first place. It is difficult to think about that being replaced by steady industrial noise for most of the day into the early evening hours, especially with no clear end date. Based on experiences in the past, we can hear the gravel pit at our cabin. I've written to Land Services over the years about the noise. What used to be occasional now looks like it will become much more consistent and long-lasting. With the growing need and demand for gravel in this area, it's reasonable to expect activity will increase and continue consistently over time. The new owner, Matthew Construction out of Wisconsin, operates gravel pits across the region. Their pit expansion request would bring the operation closer to Binnegami Lake and the noise closer to our cabin. The application includes multiple washing stations, which were previously permitted but never installed. This operation will generate continuous industrial sound, vibrating screens, crushers, washers, and pumps, layered with truck traffic and backup alarms. Even when equipment is located at the bottom of the pit, the sound carries. As you likely know, low-frequency noise travels long distances and can bend over and around berms. Once the sound reaches the lake, less than half a mile away, it travels straight across the water to our cabin with little reduction. There is simply nothing in between to block it. I've shared maps and information with the Land Services Commission, which you should also have, that explains and shows how the sound travels. At a recent Land Services meeting, it was mentioned that only one concern had been submitted, ours. There is a straightforward reason for this. Most of the other nearby properties are shielded by higher ground near the airport, while our cabin sits directly in line with the sound. There are only 2 cabins on this natural environment classified lake. The second one was built in 2016. These newer owners have likely never heard the Humphrey gravel pit operations and have not experienced the same level of impact that we have. We are not asking you to deny the proposal. We're asking for some balance so that the noise does not significantly impact our ability to use and enjoy our cabin, especially during the summer months. Adjusting the hours of operation during peak season, limiting or avoiding weekend work during that time, and using strategic stockpiling of materials for summer use would all help reduce the impact. At least one additional high berm closer to the shoreline or the edge of the expanded pit would also help. My family has been part of this community for 60 years. We have paid taxes here and purposely hired and supported only local businesses for our work over the decades. We simply ask that our concerns be taken seriously and that thoughtful mitigation is included as you consider this proposal. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Susan Schubert, 319 Pine Mountain. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else receive comments? Okay. Then we will move on to an introduction to the Minnesota DNR Regional Director.
Thank you, Madam
Commissioner
Chair.
Tribble.
All right, so I welcome Clarissa Spicer. She's the new Regional Director of the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. And she happened to be fairly close to Grand Marais, so offered to come and introduce herself and provide an update for all of us. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, good morning. Thank you.
Morning.
My name is Clarissa Spicer. I'm the Northeast Regional Director. I live and work in Grand Rapids, Minnesota at the regional headquarters there. I replace Shelley Patton, who you may have met previously. She is my predecessor as the Northeast Regional Director. And prior to that, I was the Assistant Regional Manager for the Division of Forestry. So my background is in forestry, and I'm learning a lot about the other divisions in the DNR, which is what brings me here to talk to you today, simply to introduce myself and refresh you on what the DNR does in Cook County. So we have 7 divisions in the DNR, and I've included some of the highlights about the different types of work each of those divisions do in your packets. And those divisions include parks and trails, which is of course very important up here with the state parks and waysides. We have forestry. They're in charge of forest management as well as fire suppression for the state. We have the Division of Lands and Minerals, Fisheries, Ecological and Water Resources, Wildlife, as well as our Operations Services Division. In your packet, you'll see a map, too, that describes and shows some of the land that the state owns up here. There's obviously a lot of other federal land as well, so a lot of publicly owned land up here. Cook County is very unique in that you have the highest % gross domestic product coming from outdoor recreation. So it's a really unique and beautiful place up here. It's an honor to serve in this area. I represent all 7 divisions, and that's something really unique about my position and how I might be of use to you as the county board. I represent all 7 divisions, and I can be your connection to those folks. So if you look in your packet, you'll see my information below the map, as well as the information for several other key players, the leaders in each division to this local community. So if you're looking for somebody from the DNR, that's a great reference for you. There's also lots of information on the internet. Like I mentioned, there's 4 state parks and 3 state waysides in Cook County, as well as 28 public water accesses managed by the Minnesota DNR, over 200 miles of grant and aid snowmobile trails. We have 38 aquatic management areas. That's very unique and special to this area. Fisheries are extremely important up here. There's 8 wildlife management areas and 3 state forests. So we do a lot of work up here, and I don't have anything specific. I don't have a specific issue for you here this morning, but rather simply to introduce myself so that when something does come up, you've got a face with the name. So please don't hesitate to reach out by email, by phone, or I'm happy to come up anytime if you'd like a visit. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you
Otherwise,
for your work. I was looking at all your snapshot projects. And do you have a significant cutback in workers, or how is your office able to do some of these things, which I think are really great in our area?
we do a lot of contract work. We don't have very many employees up here, which you may have noticed compared to other counties. There's only the one DNR office, other than the state parks, of course. But there's the one park, or the one office here in Grand Marais, rather, with forestry and fisheries represented. We also have a new moose researcher who's housed there. But you're right, we get a lot of work done without a lot of employees. And I think that's kind of the nature of government work, right? We're always operating on a shoestring, doing the best we can. I think what's really advantageous for us is that the folks who work for the Minnesota DNR are very passionate about what they do. They're here because they love the work and they love the area. And serving the community and natural resources is our pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Great. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Clarissa, for showing up and introducing yourself. As far as the county up here being on the border of Canada and amongst the Arrowhead counties, definitely a beautiful region. The issues that we're constantly contending with, one of the biggest is, of course, payment in lieu of taxes. And that's something that continuing to try to negotiate both an understanding and best application of practice and intent when payment in lieu of taxes was originated. Mm-hmm. But I know on this board and many of the boards that we sit on that because 92% of our properties are government properties, we don't have the tax base that other counties do of the 87 counties in our state. And therefore, payment in lieu of taxes is a significant issue for us. And when it comes to budget, we're always looking at what's happening in that front, because again, it's one of the revenue sources that is very important to us in making budgetary decisions. So just appreciate the partnership in trying to find what is consistent with best practices and what ensures that commitment is one that continues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. That is really important. And a new part of my job that I'm beginning to understand is the payment in lieu of taxes. You'll see at the top of your handout that this year we'll be making a pill payment of $589,000 to the county, and that represents the previous year's assessment. So that's something that I'm acutely aware of too, and I'm happy to have these open conversations with you about your concerns and ours between state and county, how we can cooperate to make sure that everybody's values and needs and commitments are understood.
Mm-hmm. And Madam Chair, as a follow-up, when we discuss this, there's always this delicate balance of what do we say and what do we not say, because we're trying to protect the relationship and the funding is critical to us. But I think respectful partnership conversations are integral to the ability to make sure that we are partnering and understanding both sides of the issue, so that this important funding source for us continues. So thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Clarissa, a question. You mentioned we have the highest GDP in the area of outdoor recreation. Do you happen to know a dollar amount for that?
I have it in my backpack. I'll grab it for you.
All right, that would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The other thing, and I mentioned to you before the meeting, Clarissa, is just I appreciate your willingness to come out and devote some time to speak with Mark Spindler on the maple syruping issue. It's something we've been following as a community, and again, they're an important part of our community, and it's been long-standing. As we discussed previous to the meeting, there are some issues that when leadership changes, we become aware of, and then we need to address those issues. But the commitment to understand and to show up personally and try to cultivate a healthy relationship and being able to reach resolution is important, so I thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was really, I came up last, it must have been last summer. I remember Mark and Melinda had tomatoes in their garden, so it must have been August or so. But meeting with them in person was truly one of the highlights of my summer, to get to see their operation and how they're using state land, in a sustainable way to harvest maple sap and produce maple syrup. So it's always a pleasure to come up here and to work with the folks that are using the land and the state land specifically.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So from the consent agenda, we've pulled item C, and we're going to address that now before the highway presentation. And I will turn that over to Attorney Peterson to discuss why we pulled it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing controversial about the grant itself, just the fact that Minnesota Statute 46503 requires that grants and donations be accepted by resolution on 2/3 vote, majority vote, and that the specific purpose be designated in that resolution. So I've drafted a resolution to that effect. I didn't have time to circulate it before, but I can print it off after.
Okay. So questions or comments on this? Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to be clear that procedurally, we need to have a resolution to accept this. And so we'll be doing that at a future meeting, and then the resolution will be presented so it's available to the public prior to that meeting.
I do have the resolution today, and I'm happy to read it into the record if that's acceptable, or to have the
Okay,
print version
so if
available.
it's acceptable procedurally in the timeline or whatever to accept it, I'm comfortable with that, but that's why I wanted the clarification.
Thank you. I just have laid out the recitals, setting forth what the community center does for the community, some general information about the mission of the Arrowhead Regional Arts Council, and then the fact that this would be an award of $5,000, and then the resolution itself is now therefore be it resolved that the Cook County Board of Commissioners does by resolution adopted pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 465.03 and pursuant to a 2/3 majority vote accept such grant of $5,000 to be used for a videography/photography project.
Okay, Commissioner Gamble.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jeannie. So I'd make a motion to approve acceptance by resolution of the grant funds in the amount of $5,000 from the Arrowhead Regional Arts Council for the Cook County Community Center for a photography, videography project.
Support.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
These little details that we need to cross our Ts and dot our Is, don't we? Okay, so then we'll move on to Highway Department with some information about all the good stuff happening there.
All the good things, that's right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Madam Chair,
I just wanted to mention, are we going to take a look at our other consent agenda items?
Oh, well, we can back up on that.
All right.
Okay.
Just to note what we approved.
Yeah, just to
Yeah.
note.
So the other consent agenda items are, with my paperwork in front of me, we had the claims, the minutes of the regular meeting from May 12th. We have an application for the Tofte fireworks display, for the annual liquor tobacco license application, Tofte 4th of July special road use permit, and the Sawtooth Stage Mountain Bike Race special road use permit. Commissioner Sullivan.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Now, we've cleaned up that work. Let's see what you can do.
Yeah, let's see what we got. Good morning. So a couple of things. First is awarding the summer maintenance contracts for our subordinate districts, our SGSDs. Pretty straightforward. We've been doing this. We're the fiscal administrators for this program. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just ask, the committee that we formed relative to this issue, how's that going?
Great. We've had one meeting. We're taking it one step at a time. So the first meeting went really well. It's just basically introductions, making sure that we all, we're going to see each other in the stores. We're going to talk about some sensitive things. And then we went over the charter, and we really just understood what the purpose of that group was. It wasn't to say, we're not the deciding group on whether these districts stay or not. You all are. And so what we, really established was just that foundation of we're here to problem solve. Something being hard is not an excuse. We're going to come up with solutions to things. And so, yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for that update. With that, I guess I'd make a motion for the Highway Department to award contracts to the following low bidders. Mike Rose, use the language in the request for the motion. I guess we had in our meeting the other day, we can paraphrase as long as the language exists. So I make a motion to approve as stated in our agenda.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Wonderful. And then the last thing, it's something I haven't brought here before. I don't know if we've ever done it up here. But there are, believe it or not, rules that we generally have to follow when we do construction. And so within those rules is basically, you, based on a certain traffic count, you have to make the road a certain width. The ditch has to be so deep. And what that allows us to do is just create uniformity, not only across our Cook County system, but across the entire local system in the state of Minnesota. And so that's your county state aid highway system. And so there's a project that we're working on right now on CASA 6, County Road 6, if you're familiar with where that is, right off of 7. There's three crossings that we're going to be replacing. I think it's next summer. And one of those crossings is very, very close to a curve in the road. And so, yes, and so if we want to make that curve follow the rules, it really increases the cost of the project, the impacts to the property owners in there. It's a very hilly area through there, so the cuts we would have to do are quite, it's a lot. And so really the deviation that we're looking for is to kind of just keep the road as is, not meet this standard. And what I need from that is a resolution from the board, because then I have to go to a variance committee after this to say, locally we support this, here's why we can't meet these rules. And then that committee ultimately decides whether or not we're allowed to do that or not. And so that's what this is. I'm happy to chat more if you really want to get into Chapter 8820 of State Aid Design Standards, but open to questions.
Jenny? So we have a lot of hills in all of our roads.
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not. Is this the only hill they want to be concerned about?
Well, so it's not so much the hill as it is the curve.
The curve,
And so
okay.
the curve is very sharp
Yeah.
for what the rules dictate it should be. So if I remember right, I think we need to meet like a 40-mile-an-hour design standard. Ours currently meets a 25. And so, when I look back, we can look back at 10 years of accident history. There's nothing there. We haven't had any accidents there. It's signed, so we do have, I don't think it's chevrons, but I think we have the big yellow arrow. So, it's a known entity. But it's if we were to soften that curve, we would have to purchase a lot more right-of-way from the homeowner. We would have to then, because of the hill, it turns into a lot of excavating, and it really increases the cost and everything in here. It almost the reason I'm here is it makes it borderline prohibitive to do the project and meet these standards. So what's nice though is we can deviate, we can get a variance for those very reasons, not because I just don't want to and it's hard. It's because there are these external reasons as to why.
Okay. Commissioner White?
Just one little thing. Would you explain to the public CSAH?
Oh, County State Aid Highway, and so CSAH. Any of the roads 1 through 23 are CSAHs. We get money from the state every single year to do construction on those roads.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Any further questions or comments? Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very familiar with the area that you're talking about, and as long as you go 25 miles an hour, especially when it's slippery or icy, it's good. And so, maybe one of the things that will happen if we approve this request for a variance is that we would add some additional signage with those speed limits for those that are not so familiar with the conditions there.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan?
Given that, I would make a motion to approve the resolution requesting a variance from Minnesota State Aid Design Standards for SAP 016-606-002.
I support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Good luck on that.
Yes.
Moving on to item number 6, Gunflint NOAA Station Lease Agreement. Good morning.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. So this item is a long time coming, something that I've been working on for a year and a half, going back and forth with the National Weather Service. I wrote into the item a brief description and history of the National Weather Station that's located at the Gunflint Tower, and we finally got there. And so the contract has been vetted by County Attorney Peterson, and we made some little changes here and there about liability and access, but I do believe that this is ready to go. And I stand for any questions you have about the station itself, about how the continuing operation would go. But it should be pretty straightforward. We're basically handing it back to the National Weather Service. We guarantee them access for maintenance on their equipment. They're going to replace all the equipment with new equipment that will be more reliable than the stuff that they have in there right now, and it'll serve a wider area. So that's where we're at.
One quick question. How long has that been there? How long have we been getting information from NOAA?
From at that location?
At that site, yes.
So that location was put in the year 2000, I believe, because of the 1999 blowdown. So Sheriff Wirt at the time was he was pretty perturbed that there was no warning sign or warning signal available to anybody out in the boundary waters, and of course it was his sheriff's office that had to manage a lot of recovery and a lot of other damage reports, and there was no way to get information out to people in that situation. And so he approached the National Weather Service. They said, "Nah, we don't need a station there." He said, "No, we need a station here." And so he said, "Fine, I'll just do it myself." And I'm sure Rowan can talk a little bit about how hard it was to keep that station running when it was our responsibility. This is not what we do. And we would always have partnerships with the National Weather Service to be able to replace equipment, and now it's their responsibility. And so they will have their own access, and they will be able to maintain it themselves.
And I think that was a very good educational piece for the public.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gallo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jay, for the narrative that informs our decision on this when we were looking through our 300-some page packet. And
What's another paragraph, right?
yeah, but I always appreciate narrative that helps us get perspective. So with that, I'd approve the vetted National Weather Service NOAA lease agreement for the Gunflint Weather Station.
You made that as a okay. Commissioner Sullivan?
And I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Anybody else for comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed unanimously.
Okay, moving on. So on the next item, the U.S. Forest Service road permits. So I have the second one right here, and I don't know what the process would be if I can distribute this to you to review now, or if we have to put this on a later agenda because it did not make the cut. I just received it from the Forest Service today. Thoughts?
Is it different than what we have in our packet?
It's literally word for word exactly the same. It just has a different tower address on it. So, what do you think?
And that's not because we moved the tower.
No. This is,
Yeah, over the weekend.
Okay.
Okay,
So we have the documentation and the information. We've had it, so we're not just,
yep, it's
Voting
exactly the
blind.
same, just a different tower address.
I feel very comfortable with that. Maybe for the public,
Yeah.
you'd want to read through that address change.
Yeah, so the only differences that we have on this is the ranger district for the forest, which would change from Gunflint for the bogus one that you have to Tofte for the ranger district here for the honeymoon tower. And it is the description of the restricted roads that are impacted would be the Honeymoon Tower Road, 0.2 miles of road located 2.3 miles from the Sawville Trail on the Honeymoon Trail. So it's, if you've ever ridden down the Honeymoon, it's that little spur that pops off.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
do you have copies for
I do,
everyone with
yes.
you? Would
I made sure I
you
printed out
mind
one for
handing
everyone.
those out and then one to Jana too, in case the community members present want to view it as well? Thank you.
So I printed 5. So I got one for all of you guys and then one for Jen.
Thank you.
Can I look at it quick? Where is the change?
It's just
Right
the
here?
Yep, it's just item 2.
station,
Okay.
item 2, yeah.
All right, thank you. That's fine.
Madam Chair, so for clarification, what appears on our agenda under item B and J, is that language in that motion then to change to be specific to the honeymoon tower? Or
Let me
is
check
the language in the motion that you're requesting for commissioners in item B?
I'm
Correct.
requesting for approval of both.
Both.
So that probably would,
Yeah.
it would probably be best to handle them separately.
And I, just maybe for context for both the public and just everybody here, what we're doing is we have 2 large-scale tower replacement projects coming this year, both at Honeymoon and Bogus in partnership with the state. And we've talked about that in the past before. Recently, we also formalized a process that we have in MIS and in partnership with the Highway Department for maintaining tower access roads that are not county-owned roads. And just essentially, that's documenting what we already do. The policy was that, when there's a road that we don't have the road authority over, we're going to reach out in partnership with the Highway Department to make sure that we can access those towers, and that, labor and things are something that, we're in the past been willing to provide, but we always try to partner with the road authority agency, and oftentimes they've been available or willing to provide materials and things like that. And so this is us formalizing in action that policy, knowing that we have these 2 big tower projects that are going to need more road maintenance to access those 2 individual towers. And so we're just looking to come through and submit the formalized paperwork with the Forest Service that we need to access each of those towers and potentially do some maintenance on the road before and after the construction.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I think we should address these separately, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the permit for Forest Road 140G, the Bogus Lake Road, 0.80 miles from Trout Lake Road to the Bogus Lake Tower.
Okay. Is there a second? Are you seconding?
Yeah, I
Yes,
support
okay.
that.
And you have a comment?
Then I would just ask that in the situation, you made a comment, Rowan, about our policy is to support access to all of these towers. Do we have motions that support the towers that we're not addressing today? Or is this something that we're just saying a motion to support the generic policy that applies to all towers that we have?
Yeah, so the latter. This is us going through the process that we've laid out in the tower access policy. The tower access policy was written because we have a handful of towers that are on roads that we don't control to get access to. And so if it's not, a private road or a county road and we don't have the ability, it's not maintained by our highway department normally, it made sense that we were doing enough of this where, to use an example, with the DNR being in here, right, we would call the one station that she referenced to get approval to do some maintenance on the Tower Road out in Hovland. That's a DNR forestry road, that's a minimum maintenance road. And the policy that was written that you're asking covers all of those situations where, whether it's Grand Portage owns the road to Mount Maud, or it's the Forest Service that owns the roads in these cases. The policy is written to make sure that we're getting the approval that we need to from the road authority, and that we're doing what we can to work in partnership with them so that, just because there's a tower there, we're not bearing the full burden of maintaining a road all the time. And so in a lot of these cases, like I stated, they've been willing, the road authority has been willing to provide material, and then we've come out and brought it up to a standard where the policy actually specifies access to a four-wheel drive vehicle. So we're not doing ditching, we're not doing culverts, we're not doing any of that. We're just making it so that we can access these towers because they're critical for public safety and other emergency communication services.
And so, Madam Chair, as a follow-up, thank you, Rowan. We have a policy that's been approved. It just, we're bringing permits relative to specific towers as they come up.
Yes, correct.
To reinforce that policy.
Exactly.
And so Commissioner Sullivan has made a motion which we have a second to related to the one tower, and now we're going to make another motion. So when the incident comes up that we need to have that permit in place, then we will individually approve that to a policy that we've already approved. It just reinforcing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So we have the motion on the Bogus Lake. The next one would be the Honeymoon.
Well, first we need to take a vote.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed unanimously. And we'll move on to the Honeymoon Trail access. Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Honeymoon Tower Road, which is 0.2 of a mile of road located 2.3 miles from the Sawbill Trail on the Honeymoon Trail.
Support.
Any questions or comments on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the class lesson.
We got to explain stuff.
Item number 7 is we're going to hear from the Recorder's Office.
Morning.
Morning.
So before we move to our first agenda item, I would like you to know that our examiner, Scott Smith, has retired, and the court has appointed Byers Heron as our examiner of titles. Byers is here with us today, and he has been one of our deputy examiners for approximately 18 years. And David Myers will continue to be our deputy examiner. So we have 2 types of property in Cook County. Abstract is the most common form of title found in the United States. An abstract of title is a condensed history of all deeds, mortgages, and other documents relating to a particular piece of land which affect the title. An abstract is evidence of title. Torrens is a system for registration under land which, upon the landowner's application, the court may, after appropriate proceedings, direct the issuance of a certificate of title. Any liens or encumbrances that have been recorded are referenced on the certificate. When ownership of the property changes, the old certificate of title will be canceled and a new certificate will be issued in the name of the new owner. The certificate of title is kept in the office of the Registrar of Titles. The certificate of title is the title. In Minnesota, the county recorder is the Registrar of Titles, and the registrar is an arm of the district court and under its control. The registrar works closely with the examiner of titles, who is appointed by the court and an advisor of the Registrar of Titles. Currently, in Cook County, we offer only judicial registration and a certificate of title, governed by Minnesota Statute Chapter 508. There is another option available. Certificate of Possessory Title, also known as CPT, which is an administrative form of registration and is governed by Minnesota Statute Chapter 508A. This is an application process that goes through the examiner of title, and once approved, the examiner CPT directive creates a certificate of possessory title where the certificate will sit in possessory state for 5 years. While here, the owner is still entitled to all the same protections as a certificate of title holder. Upon expiration of the 5-year period, the CPT ripens to have the same effect as a judicial registration. Registration of possessory title is generally less expensive and can be completed more quickly than a judicial registration. The process does not involve the court and requires no publication or personal service of notice of the registration other than by mail. This type of registration is only intended for uncontested titles. When part of the owner's land is already registered, the double recording of documents becomes unnecessary. The owner desires protection against adverse possession or judgments against someone with the same or similar name. Development or sale of the land is anticipated, and the owner desires the certainty of registered title. Owners wish to simplify the records of their land ownership and end the necessity of maintaining abstracts. An attorney from another county recently shared an example with me. He explained some time ago during this title process, a legal description was mistakenly changed from east to west. The error was finally discovered during a recent transfer. The CPT process took about 60 days and cost less than $2,500. By comparison, a quiet title action would have cost more than $6,000 after publication, court costs, attorney fees, and other expenses, and likely would have taken 4 months or more. The CPT process can save landowners significant time and money in correcting minor issues. CPTs are not a new concept. They have been around since 1982, with Hennepin County issuing the first one in 1990. Several counties across Minnesota are now issuing CPTs as well. Given the increase in inquiries and requests we have been receiving and the cost-saving measures to landowners, I am seeking your approval to move forward on CPTs.
Well,
Any
that's
questions?
interesting, interesting information. Should we all be applying for this? You know, we all have a title to our home. I think in some areas, people are trying to say your home is for sale, and then they get into a lot of trouble with that. But is this something we all should think about?
Possibly, and maybe buyers could answer that question better than I can.
This gives another option for landowners when they have, we'll call them academic problems with the title to their property. And it's a process to reduce the cost associated with fixing those types of things. It's not an immediate fix. It takes about 5 years. Should everyone do it? No, not necessarily. If you have a technical problem with your legal description that's disclosed, it's an easier and more cost-effective way to fix it. Holly explained the difference between abstract and Torrance property. Torrance property is just abstract property that went through a court process to fix something wrong with it. And at the end of it, you end up with what looks like a car title. So the benefit of it is you have this nice little package of this is what I own and this is what affects my property. The drawback is that there's an enhanced level of formality with Torrens property, both to get the property from abstract to Torrens and also in transferring Torrens property. It's a little more technical, and I'm required because of that technicality. So to tie things together, I'm here today because I'm the one who helps move those things through. Now, that can be to the general public who doesn't deal in abstract or Torrens property or have any idea what that is. It can be frustrating to deal with because it can be expensive if there are technical problems. So this is really a benefit to landowners all over as just another option to be able to fix things that are incorrect. And as Holly mentioned, the Certificate of Possessory Title process is one that is codified by state statute, but it's up to each county to decide whether or not they want to adopt it. And it's before you guys to have this as another option for the landowners in Cook County.
Commissioner Sullivan, Commissioner Gamble.
No.
I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, didn't you?
No.
Commissioner Gamble.
I'll defer to our administrator.
Administrator
and then I'll-
Crowell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are there any risks to moving forward with this process?
I see none. When Holly mentioned this administrative process, you file, you put notice in the real estate record, and then there's a 5-year period where people could object to it. So it's, the world belongs to those who show up. So this is it's not an immediate fix, like I mentioned, but in Cook County, a lot of people either want to sell or buy property, and they don't just flip it. They hold on to it. So if you have some time, this is a nice feature to be able to say, okay, I don't need this fixed today, but I know, 5, 10 years, 20 years from now, I'll know it'll be fixed when I go to sell. So I see zero risk.
I agree.
Mr. Gamble.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So is it not true that Torrens title, when it comes to selling property, is more attractive because it's gone through that process? In other words, I guess in my history, it's been like, if you got Torrens title, that's sort of reassurance on the title relative to a potential buyer.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
There can be problems with Torrens property, just like there can be with abstract.
Yeah.
There was large parts of Cook County that were changed from abstract to Torrens property a long time ago,
Yeah.
when surveying techniques were not as precise as they are today. So a lot of the older Torrens titles still have problems with them.
Mm-hmm.
And the process to fix a Torrens title
Yeah.
is mildly painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Madam Chair, I would say in my looking at this, that the CPT process is better if your title is completely uncontested and you just want a faster, cheaper, non-judicial way to convert your abstract land to the Torrens system. It operates entirely through an administrative review by the examiner of titles and does not require court appearances. So it's something that facilitates a process. It just makes it less costly and a lot quicker. And as you said in your narrative, Lake County recently adopted it, and it's a provision that certainly I would agree with. And having said that, I would approve the Recorder Register of Titles Office to implement the Certificate of Possessory Title process in Cook County. Possessory.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see everybody.
Good to see you.
Okay, moving on to our second agenda item, is what Jenny was talking about a little bit ago, property fraud. We are asking to be able to implement document alerts into our recording program. So property fraud, also referred to as deed fraud or house stealing, is a form of white-collar crime in which individuals fraudulently record documents against a property in an attempt to claim ownership for financial gain. While such incidents are uncommon, they can have serious consequences for property owners. To help safeguard taxpayers' property, we would like to offer document alerts, a free notification service available to Cook County property owners. By enrolling in the program, property owners would receive an automated email whenever a document is recorded in our office under their name, legal description, and/or parcel number. Upon receiving an alert, they can review the recording and determine whether it is legitimate or whether further action may be necessary. There is no charge to enroll or receive email document alerts. Document images may be viewed through iDoc Market for a subscription fee, or property owners may request a copy of the document at no cost by calling, emailing, or stopping by our office. To obtain a copy, they would need to provide the document number listed in the alert. Enrollment is not automatic. They would need to register using their own computer or device and must have a valid email address in order to receive notifications. Although document alerts cannot prevent fraudulent activity, the service acts as an early warning system that allows property owners to take appropriate action if they believe fraudulent activity may have occurred. If approved, we will notify the public through the county website and informational brochures available at our office, including instructions on how to enroll in the program.
If I may,
Yes,
sorry
go
for
Yeah.
stepping out earlier. This is a significant issue. We're seeing attempts at fraud, that is someone purporting to sell property that they don't actually own, weekly. So we haven't seen it in Cook County as much, but it is happening in all the surrounding counties and all the surrounding states. So if anyone has seen the TV shows or the TV ads for Title Lock or something like that, that's what this seeks to address, is you bought property and someone else purports to be you to sell and get the proceeds of the sale. And this is real, and it's happening constantly. This is a very nice feature that will help people. There are other features coming out to try and protect the general public against this, because this really attacks, public records and the faith people have that the public records are correct. So I'd strongly encourage that this be adopted, and it was really nice that Holly picked this up and added as a feature. So
This has been reported maybe over the last 3-4 years in the Tribune and other news sources that it is becoming quite a situational problem. And no, it hasn't come here yet, but we probably will be next. So it is a concern. Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you so much. Well, I really appreciate you bringing this forward. I think it's really important. I also think it's important enough we make sure that we're, in a very broad way, reaching out to property owners, and whether that be in addition to your office and something on the website, spending the money to send out a letter, or having some kind of public information release. I think we need to really share the information with our public.
I agree.
Commissioner Gamble.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for your reinforcing and making us aware. One question I would have is the information that the landowner provides to the county, information that we have available to us in some way. What I'm getting at is concern about concerns that require us to provide more information that's personal information to a government entity. And so what I'm saying is, it's here's the concern, we can help you to try to mitigate, the exposure to this concern if you provide this information to us. And if that information that we're providing as a landowner is information that is usually readily acceptable or something, it's just legitimacy and comfort level on the public's part, providing additional information to protect themselves. That's my question.
So the concern being, are they providing information above and beyond what would normally be provided in a regular real estate transaction?
Yeah, in other words, when you're giving a government entity additional personal information about yourself under the umbrella of protecting you.
Yeah.
And I am just saying, for those that might ask that question, we want to try to address it so that they know this is legitimate, this is how the information is used, and this is something that I wouldn't have any question about.
I believe the only additional information that's not already provided would be an email address.
Email.
Because you submit a lot of private information anytime you buy or sell real estate. And in Minnesota, at least, it is fairly readily available, unfortunately. Other states really restrict access to that information. But if you dig deep enough, a lot of it is available, but it all goes to the state of Minnesota. So.
Yeah. And as a follow-up, Madam Chair, that's the heart of the question, which is it's available there anyway, other than your email.
Yep.
And that's probably what makes us more vulnerable than some states, because that information is available if you dig for it.
It is, yep.
Yeah, thank you.
And this is something that they would voluntarily sign up for. It isn't a requirement for each landowner to do this. It's only if they want to do it.
Yeah, I understand that. I just alleviate concerns about giving information. That information is there anyway, other than your email, and that's just addressing that component of a decision to receive the benefit. Yeah, thank you.
And just to clarify too, the information that is provided is not something that is dictated at the county level. So it's all state. So it's not like we are saying we are giving more information than any other county. This is what every county in the state does.
Yeah.
Other states handle that information differently.
Yeah.
In the other states that I've operated in, this feature is one that is utilized pretty regularly, and people tend to like it. I used it when I was in Montana, and thought it was a very nice feature.
Yeah. Thank you.
I see that the one-time fee of $4,500, who's that paid to?
That would be to Tyler Technologies, who our recording program is through. They're our recording software company.
Okay, and then a $600 fee annually to keep it up?
Yes,
Okay,
which we do have money in our technology fund to cover this.
okay. Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When we're in the budget process, we're always talking about your department and dollars there to see if we can't get some of them. And so it's nice to have an application that is directly related to the department. And with that, I would make a motion to recommend the approval of the document alerts.
I'll support that. Have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Holly,
Thank
for
you.
updating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we'll move on to Land Services, who's going to have a few things to discuss with us. Good morning.
Good morning. The first item I have for you is an interim use permit submitted by Putt and Pets. It's for a recreational vehicle, an RV, which has been in place since 2019 through what staff previously had issued for recreational vehicle permits administratively. When they came forward to renew that interim use permit, it came to our staff's attention that in the zone district that property is in, the general commercial, recreational vehicles are not actually a permitted use, and so we have to go through this process to give our staff the administrative authority to reissue that interim use permit, or the RV permit. So the Planning Commission held a public hearing last May something, I don't have the date in front of me, I'm sorry, and they recommended approval. There were some conditions set with that, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
How was the recreational vehicle used?
It's used for the prior operator of Putt and Pets for them to come and stay in that seasonally. So it's not an employee rental unit. It's just for them to come and stay intermittently throughout the summer.
A place for the goats to take a break?
I know. No, the goats don't stay in the RV, I don't think.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner Sullivan.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution for the 5-year IUP to allow the permanent seasonal use of one recreational vehicle in the General Commercial Zone District at 2014 West Highway 61.
And I'll support that. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The second item is amendment to a conditional use permit submitted by WTTC Land Management Company. Northland Constructors is a part of that larger business. This is to amend the existing conditional use permits for 2 areas of the mining operation. So the first is to expand the open pit area from 10 to 15 acres. And the other part is for a wash plant as a part of the conditional use permit. This gravel pit has been permitted since 1996 and has undergone several amendments over time, which is summarized in the staff narrative for the Planning Commission. Originally it was permitted for 5 acres, then it got an amendment to open up to 10 acres. And so now it's an amendment again to open up to 15 acres. And in the original 1996 permit, the wash plant operations were recognized for potential future use through an amendment process when the applicant brought forward the appropriate technical information. Northland Constructors has been operating in that pit under the previous owners, George and Cheryl Humphrey. And in 2020, there was an interim use permit for a wash plant operation for a specific highway project. But that was just a 1-year interim use permit. So Northland would like to have that wash plant as a conditional use permit. The Planning Commission held a public hearing for this application earlier this month, and there were, as previously mentioned during your public comments here, there was 1 letter of opposition submitted by Ms. Perrin-Schultz. And then there were a couple of comments in favor of the pit, recognizing the need for the materials. From staff's perspective, this pit is surrounded by public land, but there is a lot of wetlands surrounding it, so there's not a lot of topography beyond the pit screening any noise from Benegami Lake. The pit itself is about a half mile from Benegami Lake on its western shoreline, and about 1 mile from the Schultz properties that you received your public comments on today. The Planning Commission talked about a variety of different aspects of this pit, which I tried to summarize in my board report for you. They did address the hours of operation, and if they wanted to do more restrictive hours of operation. And the Planning Commission felt that what they proposed in these conditions was satisfactory, primarily in part due to our short construction season and the high demand for these materials. But just for reference, when we run into these cases where a recommendation is made by the Planning Commission, and before the board you may want something else evaluated. Traditionally, the board has made a recommendation to send this back to the Planning Commission to further evaluate certain aspects of the application. But I want to be really clear that the public comment period has closed, and a public hearing was held before the Planning Commission. So if this did go back to the Planning Commission, we would not be accepting any further comments from the public. It would be reviewing the record that we've received so far and addressing any concerns that the board may have. So with that, what staff have done with this staff report and this application proposal, because of all the amendments over time, we try to consolidate all of the recommendations or conditions that have been set in previous approvals and bring them all nested into one approval, so everything is really clear and expectations with the contractor. I understand that there was a restoration plan historically with the pit, so I want to be clear that it's not as though that was neglected. We just don't have that on record. So there was much discussion before the Planning Commission about the benefit of getting a clear restoration plan with the current operators, Northland Constructors, as being a pretty significant benefit through this review process. And this pit, I'll just finish, is in the same annual review process as all other gravel pits that have permits in Cook County. We do not reissue conditional use permits. They're a property right once they've been granted, but we do, as staff, administratively review all the gravel pits through our annual gravel pit review process. So if you've read stuff about the reissuance of a permit or about the staff review, that's what that's in reference to.
So are they asking to continue the work there? They're working there right now?
I don't know if they've started their construction season. It depends on if they've got projects in the area typically. So pits will go vacant, until there's a specific project that they might need the materials for. But yeah, it currently has a conditional use permit to be open for 10 acres.
10 years, okay. So I went through this with a gravel pit request on Kramer Road, and the people who live there probably, I would say, would be up to 3 miles away from the potential pit. It wasn't used. It was going to be excavated. The person had property rights to do that. They still haven't done anything with it, so the neighbors are happy about that. But, you try to weigh both sides. We need the gravel. But you also need to understand the folks who live by it. This morning, we had a couple of comments read this morning, and so it's kind of a balance between trying to keep the construction work going with gravel and then to understand the neighbors. And we did limit the hours down there. That's how we agreed on that, was limit the hours when they open it up. Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I've had an opportunity to visit, and I'm pretty knowledgeable not only about the gravel pit, but the properties on Benegami that have been referenced. And I'm familiar with the pit because I actually got gravel there myself. I went out with Jed Smith a few years ago and picked out some rock from my property. And I've also visited the Pine Mountain Road property, 319, that was referenced, and actually recommended a construction company to do the remodeling of that property and the addition of a couple of buildings. And so due to the proximity of the lake, and I've been there fishing and part of the Loon Watch program there, I'm real familiar with the lake as well. And so I've reflected on this a great deal after listening to the discussion at the Planning Commission. Their concerns were about noise and hours of operation, but they weren't discussed real thoroughly. The primary focus, and I was really glad to see that they focused on the reclamation and restoration and the financial assurances considerations. And so then we met for that legal land use training a week ago. And there was discussion there for those of us that were in attendance, and it brought up the fact that it is possible for an IUP or a CUP to have different operations and different hours for each of those operations. So pertinent to that, I did a little research and found that there are some Minnesota ordinances and other counties and local governments that do have different kinds of procedures for different operations. And so given that new information, I think about in the materials that we read, first of all, Condition 6, where we talk a little bit about noise, and I know that Neva has the ability to measure sound. She has a device that will do that. So that's something we could look at and consider related to Minnesota Rule 7030. And then Condition 12, according to my research, could be split into two parts. Kind of Condition 12A, excavation, loading, and hauling. And you could have hours of operation Monday through Friday, and then something different on Saturday, and then as already written in there, no operations on Sunday or legal holidays. And Condition B could be related to crushing, screening, and washing, which could be Monday through Friday, maybe some different hours, and then limited or restricted on Saturday, Sunday, or holiday operations. And like all gravel pits, there is an annual review. But I thought about this a lot because I live near a gravel pit, and I hear that backup beeping, and I think about the distance I am from that gravel pit and knowing that some of that sound will come across the water, which is a little different than something that we've dealt with before. Might cause us to send this back to the Planning Commission to reconsider some of the conditions. Just, again, like Commissioner Storley mentioned, to balance operational needs, our need for gravel, but reasonable mitigation with some of the sound impacts. So that is my thought.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Those are good points. And given, for clarification, the letters that were read by Administrator this morning, if you referenced in your introduction to this, that public comment period and anything that was voiced, that public comment period has closed, was that statement a statement in response to the letters read this morning?
That statement's specifically in reference if this is to get sent back to the Planning Commission, to be really clear that the Planning Commission is not going to receive future public comments. How to approach the comments received this morning, my recommendation would be to see if there's anything substantive that is different than what the Planning Commission discussed already. In cases like this, with this process, the county board can still accept pertinent information that might be different than what the Planning Commission might have known about, and then it would be appropriate for the board to see if that necessitates it being sent back to the Planning Commission for further discussion. One thing I want to point out is that the applicant isn't here and that they weren't notified that there might be additional public comments received to their request today. And so just procedurally speaking, we do want to ensure fairness in this process and transparency.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was looking through the conditions, which you referenced it, to see things that address the concerns that were raised this morning. And there's a lot in the packet, but 152, I think page 152 is one that shows the land, and if that has the land as orange on this visual that we're looking at, and my question is that the additional acres, where are we seeing those acres added on to the existing parcel? Is it towards the lake?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
So the additional 5 acres is towards the lake.
That's what I interpreted be, why I wanted to clarify that. So it would seem, and, trying to read through the narrative to understand this, that the issues that are raised this morning, hours of operation, sound across lake, trying to find a thoughtful mitigation for some of these, issues relative to sound, a term limit, and you did reference in the conditions that an annual compliance visit is something that is in place. This is property that is transferring from one owner to a new owner, and the new owner is an owner that is out state. And I would assume that when the commission is looking at this, we would be looking at the company that is now the new owner and their reputation and their best practices relative to addressing these issues. From my standpoint, I would agree with Commissioner Sullivan that I think it should go back to address these things, taking a deeper dive into the issues to see if we can't find that thoughtful balance, as Commissioner Starley also referenced. And in anything that we're doing, we're guided by policy and practice, and we're also trying to cultivate community that is mindful of any concerns and addresses those, and make sure that businesses, ownership is clear on expectation as to how we will move forward on this. So I would support referring it back, and I would be open to hearing your response to that. Something else to put on the calendar for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Gamble. I think procedurally there's no issue with bringing this back to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission's next meeting will be in early June, and so this would potentially come back to you at the end of June. I think given the content that you want the Planning Commission to discuss will be very helpful in this process. One thing that we talk about with landowners in our office is that people don't have a right to silence on their property. There is inherent noises that happen in rural areas of the county. This property is in the FAR 1 zone district, and in the FAR 1 zone district, a dog kennel is a permitted use. So replace a permitted gravel pit with hours of operation with a dog kennel that has lots and lots of dogs barking during mealtime. That also would generate noise, and that would be a permitted property right for that person. So there is inherently in the FAR 1 zone district a general understanding that noise is going to be generated as a property right with certain types of activities. So I just want to be really clear about that, is that I don't think it's reasonable to set expectations that the property owners on Benegami Lake may always experience silence. And I don't think that's what they're asking for, just to be clear, but I just also want to be clear that there's going to be some amount of noise that will get generated, and also how much noise is reasonable. We typically set the Minnesota State noise standards as kind of our benchmark of what we expect businesses to be meeting. And I would be rather surprised if this property owners on Benegami Lake were experiencing noise from this pit exceeding those standards, given the amount of distance. So what is, trying to meet that compromise and that middle ground, I think, is maybe where I want a little bit more feedback. At this point, recognizing the holidays or the hours of operations, we could further discuss that. If the wash plant wants to be revisited as an interim use permit, it doesn't need to be a conditional use permit. Sometimes that interim use permit process is helpful as a experiential period of time for property owners to see what an activity is like. Approve an interim use permit for 2 years, and maybe a project will come up that will need that type of activity within that 2-year time span. Those are the types of considerations, I guess, that we want to be clear about of what you'd like the Planning Commission to further discuss.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate you bringing up, the idea of an IUP and separating out some of the different activities. And I was actually, in my head, kind of thinking maybe even a 3-year, because it takes time to make all of this operational. So I would say that from my standpoint, for the Planning Commission to look at the opportunity for an interim use permit and to separate out in their conditions excavation, loading, and hauling in one bucket, and crushing, screening, and washing in the other bucket, and then you look at your days of operation and hours of operation according to that. I think also that is something I'm thinking about also in a broader sense, not that it impacts this, this is very specific, but that we have our aggregate mapping coming up, and we may find in the future that we're going to have more gravel pits close to streams, close to water, and we need to be thinking ahead so that we're prepared to do that appropriate balance, as Commissioner Storley said, to get the balance between that quiet and solitude we want, but the absolute need for gravel, and there's going to be noise. We know that, but it's just making sure it's reasonable.
Commissioner Gamble.
The wetlands that have been defined, are they wetlands, looking at the lake, I haven't been on the lake to see if that wetland is in the 5 acres that's closest to the lake. In other words, we have setbacks and things that if that's solid property, solid land, and it consists of no wetlands, it goes right up to the edge of the lake, there's a setback requirement, I think, that would try to protect the lake and how this operation would be. If there's wetlands there, then it's reinforced by the fact that they can't disturb the wetlands. So that's one question I would have with the interim use permit. As a company, I would be looking at my total investment in dollars. If it's not a lot of investment, then I have no problem with that. But if I'm going to have to make a major investment in something that I have no guarantee it'll be long-term, I might rethink it. In the gravel industry, that might not be a big issue because it's equipment that's transferable. The other question I would have is, this is a long-standing company, that they might be able to address voluntarily some of the issues to try to mitigate the sound. And so if you do it on the basis of talking about it and seeing what might you be able to do to address some of these things, that's what contributes to the community aspect of these decisions. It's not just compliance with policy and practices, it is also awareness to try to see if we can't. Not because we're obligated, but because we want to cultivate, good relationships. So that would be some of my thoughts.
Mr. Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Either Neva or our county attorney Peterson might be able to answer this. In Minnesota, an interim use permit, if I'm correct, can go anywhere from 1 to 5 years.
I don't have the time.
It can go it could go further than that.
Okay.
Often an interim use permit would have a condition that states that it is null upon transfer of the property. So it could stay just with the property owner too, which could be for a much longer period of time.
All right, I just wanted to ask that, given Commissioner Gamble's question about the business interests and costs that they're putting forward, to keep that in mind.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you. The other thing is that with the follow-up, the inspection thing, which is already built in there and has been discussed by the Planning Commission, that with the interim use permit, once we determine all of the components of what we're agreeing to, then being able to follow up on that and make sure to build integrity and accountability into this, that it says to the business that what we have, the conditions under which we're allowing this are being met, and it says to the community the conditions that are identified in this agreement are being complied with. That's a good way of doing business. So I would say clearly defining that and giving the business an opportunity to address how it might be able to do this and demonstrate how it's done in the past, given their history, would be a good thing.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just say also in deference to the decision that the Planning Commission made and in deference to the business owner, just that the criteria that the commission is limited to is the specific criteria that has been set out. And so while we're always concerned about the other landowners and residents in the area, if that is the overriding purpose, then that's something that needs to ultimately be changed within the criteria that they're addressing.
Administrator Trillo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only addition that I have is just, I think it's important when this is discussed at the Planning Commission to also identify the risks with any additional changes. So, for example, if the hours are changed, what is the risk to the county if we don't have access to the resources during that time frame? So I just want to make sure that as they discuss this, they're talking about all the other, risks and considerations and bringing that forward as well.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think it's an important element of it. I would say that identifying all those components on all sides of the issue, I mean, as a county and what we provide by way of governance and our policies, what we're accountable to the state or any other regulatory agency in this situation, looking at the community and looking at creating opportunity and looking at addressing need. One question I have is what we talk about, sand is different than gravel, and maybe what we're finding is that getting washed sand when we do our septic work is an issue, and it costs us because we have to bring it in because we don't have anybody that does that. And this isn't addressing that issue because we're dealing with gravel here. We're not dealing with sand. Is that correct?
There's a variety of materials that come out of this pit. So with the screeners, they can go through all the aggregate materials and separate it out by size. I don't know if they get sand clean enough for sewer sand here, but that's part of what the washing operations, I believe, would be for. We do have a couple of pits in the county that do create sand adequate for septic systems. So not all of the sand from the county is imported, so to say.
Yeah. So what's your comfort level, if that's a fair question? I from my standpoint, I think Commissioner Sullivan has expressed, I think going back and just reviewing this, I think when we deal with situations like this, we're dealing with the immediate, and concerns that we're maybe overlooking and not aware of should be brought to our attention in making a recommendation. But I also think in the bigger picture that it shows that we are a listening body who seeks to try to find ways to find that balance, and that's why I think this would be an investment in that commitment to do that as a governing body. So,
Me, Madam Chair? Just to address those questions. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Gamble. I think I've heard a lot of helpful comments before you. I just want to kind of reiterate as far as our process with conditional use permits that it's really important that the public participates at the Planning Commission level. One of the two comments that you received today was received at the Planning Commission, but one of the two wasn't. And when folks try to come to the board to intervene in the process at that point, and then send this back to the Planning Commission to kind of get a second bite at the apple, so to say, it does create additional work for our office and additional work for the Planning Commission when they could participate fully at the Planning Commission level. So I would encourage us to have further discussions in the future if we can tighten down our procedure with how we want to handle this. Of course, we absolutely want to encourage public dialogue, but there is a reason that we have this very linear process built into this for fairness. With the different comments that I've heard, I might be helpful if I could summarize a few of the items. Commissioner Gamble, I heard you ask about wetlands, and I might be able to address that now. Cook County's wetland specialist, Ms. Travis, did review this application, and in this expansion I hadn't mentioned was previously applied for back in 2022 and also recommended for approval then. And in both circumstances, our wetland specialist did not feel that additional groundwater monitoring would be needed for this site based off of the characteristics of the landscape and the wetland locations. So our office doesn't have a concern from a technical perspective about impacts to wetlands. For that point, as far as from the business perspective, I think that might be one helpful component of sending this back to the Planning Commission to talk with the business about how different hours of operations for different types of activities may impact their operations. We don't want to accidentally set a condition that significantly impacts the ability for the business to actually do the operation that they're applying for. So that's where being able to discuss with the applicant, that's a very valuable opportunity for the Planning Commission in this process. And then Commissioner Gamble, you asked a question about the interim use permit. And I think that's a good point, that can be a really helpful part of sending this back to the Planning Commission. Obviously, the expansion to 15 acres can't really be an interim use permit, but the washing operations could more easily be considered as an interim use permit. And I've kind of heard 3 years floated about. What would be helpful for me in bringing this back to the Planning Commission would just kind of bullet-pointed considerations that the board may want the Planning Commission to discuss. And that's what I've heard is the potential exploration of shifting the washing operations to an interim use permit. I have not heard any concern about the expansion to 15 acres, so please correct me if I'm wrong. And then also to separate out condition number 12 into an A and a B based off of those different categories, with discussion with the operator applicant about whether those different sets of hours of operations for different types of activities would work okay for their operations. And then I also heard a point about consideration to the risk to the county about more restrictive hours for those uses, and for further discussion as to whether or not that may be a consideration. So please definitely add to that.
When this type of project takes place in the planning, do those folks receive a letter ahead of time to indicate that you have a chance to have your opinion at the meeting?
Yes, the adjacent property owners. So, yep, we send out a public notice to at least everybody within a quarter mile or at least 10 property owners. In this case, it definitely went beyond that quarter mile because this property is surrounded by public land. So yes, these property owners, I believe, were included in the public comment. And like I mentioned before, one of the two did provide her comments to the Planning Commission.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to kind of reiterate, the comments that we heard today, I don't think impact our decision in relationship to sending something back to the Planning Commission. I look at my training, and I want to thank Neva for the land use training that we received last week, and that gave me an opportunity to look at things in a little different light. But I think we do need to focus on what was at the public hearing, what was presented, and what's in our packet today.
Administrator Trotman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Neva, the only addition that I think we heard from the public comment and from the commissioners today is just if there are any other noise mitigation strategies that we could leverage.
I appreciate that. Yes, thank you. I will add to that there was a request in one of the written comments submitted to the Planning Commission about noise mitigation to explore using different technologies. And the Planning Commission and staff felt that the different technologies proposed may not create a very safe or as safe work environment as the traditional beepers. Yeah, so we can further discuss that with the applicant to see what options they may have for ideas for that.
Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Neva, for bringing that up. I, too, looked into the different kinds of backup beepers and tried to research that a little bit. And all I will tell you is gravel pits are very, very dangerous. And we want that loud noise to be able to protect people who are working in those pits. So I do want to say that, even though I live across the street from a pit and the noise bothers me, it's important to have those safety measures. So I would make a motion to send this back to the Planning Commission with the items that we have reviewed here today with
I
Neva.
support that.
Any further questions or comments? Commissioner Gamble.
Can you, well, relative to the letters, you referenced that one letter was received, so the Planning Commission could look at that. I would say that the two letters were identical, although the placement in their composition were different points in the letter, but the issues were still similar. Oftentimes, we'll see a form letter that comes out in mass from an interested party. I think what we have to be careful to, and I think to the administrator's point, is that we have a process in place. People are welcome to participate in that process. They are encouraged to participate in that process. We don't want decisions that go through processes that are followed to be circumvented by an onslaught of letters. This is not considered an onslaught that causes to have misgivings. We have to trust the process. But I do believe, and I've referenced many times, that I really appreciate the work of the Planning Commission because they inform our decisions at this level. But those issues that were addressed, I could not find things specific that made me comfortable in supporting this. So on that basis, not trying to create a behavior that says all you have to do is flood the commissioners with letters last minute and they'll balk. No, it has to be based upon the criteria that drives us in our decision making. Another question I have is, what is the setback requirement given that this 5 acres borders the lake? In other words, it's going to be right on the lake. So what is the setback requirement for operations?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Gamble. Those are very helpful points. I would say distance-wise, the eastern property line of this parcel is at least a half a mile from the western shorelines of Benegami Lake, and 1 mile away from the private property owners on the eastern side, the far side of Benegami Lake. So this property, the gravel pit itself, is pretty far from the lake. It's just a lot of wetlands between where the gravel pit and the lake is. There's just not a lot of elevation to kind of do some of that natural sound barrier. There are wetlands on the north side of this parcel, and there's, I believe, a 50-foot setback requirement from the boundary of the wetlands for the pit itself. Does that answer your?
Yeah, and we have these policies and requirements in place to protect, water and other elements when we make these decisions. So all of those things are reinforcing those concerns that get addressed relative to the lake itself and the environment. But I guess my last question then would be, are you clear on the issues that have been raised that going back through this process that they can be addressed?
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
if I may just bullet point, I've got down to 3 items. The exploration of sound with condition number 12, breaking out into an A and a B. Working with the contractor, the applicant, to explore what sound mitigation measures they may have available that they can provide to the Planning Commission that could be integrated into the conditions, as well as explore shifting the wash plant to a 3-year interim use permit.
Hours of operation, did you say?
Yep, that was the first one, item
Yeah,
12.
okay, all right.
Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further conversation, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
At this point, because the next 2 items will require quite a bit of concentration and discussion, I would like to take a 10-minute break. Thank you.
Madam Chair, could
Yes.
could I ask that we move to the revolving loan fund application? Ruth Sorrow from the Art Colony has been here all morning,
Oh,
and perhaps we could
okay,
address
we
that.
can do that. Commissioner Gamble?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request that's come before the revolving loan committee, and we discussed this, and then we had an interview as well, and so it's coming with recommendation from the revolving loan committee.
Yeah, we met last week. The Art Colony is requesting $75,000 revolving loan for the purchase of Ella's Inn. This is subject to completion of a bank loan, a second position mortgage on that property, completion of the promissory note, loan agreement, final approval of documents by the county attorney. This is, Ella's Inn is located right below the old traditional Art Colony property. They use it to provide lodgings to those taking classes, to artists and residents, but also to private general rentals when they don't need it for their operations. Bank closing is planned for May 29th, so the Revolving Loan Fund Committee voted unanimously to support this request. And Ruth is here if you have any questions.
Okay. Questions or comments? Here, yes. Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would make a motion to approve a loan to the Granbury Art Colony for $75,000 for the purchase of Ella's Inn, subject to completion of a bank loan, a second position mortgage on this subject property, completion of promissory note and loan agreement, and final approval of documents by the county attorney.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you for sitting in.
Thank you. We'll now take a 10-minute break. Like we should have. We are resumed, and we're moving on to our next item with Land Services. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item I have is a rezone request provided by Lucky Soul Holdings LLC. This is to rezone one of two parcels that makes up the property of Solbakken Resort. This parcel is 1.72 acres and is currently zoned single-family residential, even though there's part of the infrastructure and use activities of Solbakken Resort on this parcel. So the applicant would like to request to have this parcel rezoned to resort commercial residential, which would match the zoning of the other parcel of Solbakken Resort. With this request, we did a public comment, public hearing that was held before the Planning Commission on May 13th. There were written comments submitted on the conditional use permit. That's the next item on your agenda, but we didn't receive any written comments regarding the rezone request. During the public hearing, there were two individuals who spoke during the public hearing and expressed support of the rezone request. And the Planning Commission held a discussion point, talked about a lot of different site considerations and how the infrastructure and utilities of Solbakken Resort are on this single-family residential, so functionally speaking, it is a part of the resort, and unanimously recommended approval. In your packets are draft findings of the rezone, and as a reminder, with rezones, we don't have conditions of approval. It's just a binary approve or deny type of request.
I'm trying to visualize this. So if you're standing in front of the resort, the lodge, and the motel, this would be to the east?
Yes,
Okay.
yep. So if you're standing on Highway 61 looking at Lake Superior, the left side of the property where the Jonas House and one of their septic mounds is located is in the single-family residential zoned parcel.
So it's between Lutzen Resort and the next resort?
Yes, I don't remember what the,
I don't
Yep.
know. Yeah, okay. Doesn't seem like a lot of land there.
it's 1.72 acres, so it's a pretty small parcel. But together, the two parcels do make 5 acres, which is the minimum lot area of the RCR zone district. So effectively, rezoning this would help the next parcel next door be conforming once the two parcels are combined into one.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought it was just a good, healthy discussion at the Planning Commission, and seems very reasonable. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution for the rezone of 1.72 acres from single-family residential to resort commercial residential on parcel ID 51193150.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously there.
Thank you. And the last item I have for you is a conditional use permit request for both of the parcels that make up Solbakken Resort. There is currently a process going through to transfer ownership to Lucky Soul Holdings, who's the applicant for this request. And this request is a conditional use permit for a commercial planned unit development, which is effectively the process to convert the existing resort into fractional ownership of the units. This is a process that's outlined in the Cook County subdivision ordinance and also recognized in the Cook County zoning ordinance. The subdivision ordinance outlines the resort conversion process. So essentially, we're looking at this one large parcel, and we're trying to identify how the existing infrastructure and utilities and units are laid out, and what it would take to shift those units into single ownership, where every unit has its own parcel ID and can transfer ownership individually. And with that, where nonconformities may exist. It's a lot easier to develop land when it's vacant and we're just building it, but when we have these old resorts, often we find that there's existing things that don't conform to our standards. And so this process is to go through and look at the existing resort and identify what areas may need to be addressed in order to plat out and subdivide the land. We do find, just conceptually speaking, that this is a process that helps these mom and pop resorts get the value of their land and be able to sell it to someone. It's a lot more difficult to find a buyer for one large resort these days. So this is a process that's in place to kind of help the economics of the current property owners, is my general understanding. With this, the Planning Commission held the public hearing earlier this month at the same time as the rezone request. Now, I'll note that the rezone that you just approved now makes both of these parcels RCR, Resort Commercial Residential, which is a listed conditional use. List in their conditional use the commercial planned unit development. So this does get a little bit technical in some of the jargon, but that's what I want to make clear is now that both of these parcels are RCR zoned, commercial planned unit developments are a listed conditional use. So that's where we go through this process to evaluate the findings and conditions. And if the applicant is meeting all of those standards, we really need to try to find what conditions we set to mitigate the concerns. And in order to deny a request like this, there would need to be a substantial concern with the compatibility and the findings. So I just want to kind of start off with the framework of the zoning and where this activity is relative to all of that. We held the public hearing. This notice area was for a quarter-mile area. We did receive a letter that was concerned and opposed to the request, a written comment, with concern to how this might change the character of the area, and it might make more intensive feelings along that corridor of the character of that corridor of Highway 61. Overall, the request and what's in this conditional use permit is conceptual at this point. So another step back, big picture thing about this proposal is that to do a resort conversion, there's several steps that are needed. So first, it's the conditional use permit. Right now, we are just looking conceptually to see, can what's being proposed meet the ordinance standards? Is the density allowable? Are there concerns with nonconformities? The conditional use permit is where we set conditions for the areas that we have concern about. And then those conditions get integrated into the platting process. That would be the second step, to do a preliminary plat where we actually see a plat map with each of those resort units in a separate unit ownership configuration and what shared utilities might exist to address whether or not those shared utilities can sustain the proposed development. In the preliminary plat is also a public hearing, so the public would have another opportunity to comment and weigh in on the preliminary plat. Really, the rubber meets the road with the preliminary plat stage for technical information. After the preliminary plat is the final plat. The final plat is not a public hearing. We're not receiving public comments, but it is a public meeting that reviews the final plat and makes sure that everything that was addressed during the conditional use permit and the preliminary plat, everything before then got integrated into the final plat. So that's the roadmap for what the resort conversion process includes. During the Planning Commission meeting, they discussed a lot of different aspects of this request. The Planning Commission overall felt optimistic, I would say. There was a lot of enthusiasm to see an entity willing to put investment into this property and try to make the business model work for what the industry is right now. And they felt that the applicant addressed a lot of their concerns. At this point, as I mentioned before, everything is very conceptual. So the amount of density proposed, we don't know that that can actually be met until we actually see a septic designer demonstrate that the septic system can meet that capacity. So I would say what you see in this application with the expansion is, it is aspirational if the infrastructure cannot sustain that, and it's not feasible ultimately if the infrastructure cannot sustain that, and that's made really clear to the applicant through this application process. I think that's the long and the short of it. Just big picture wise, they're looking at phase development. So a lot of the shoreline units are looking to get some interior remodeling. They're planning on taking down the motel and replacing that with 6 units, and then adding an additional 7 units. Overall, there would be no more than 23 units in total. The lodge itself has 3 units, so that was you might have noticed if you really read through the packet clearly, we have a table in there that doesn't quite recognize those 3 units in the lodge. So there's an amendment to change that total number of units. And with that, our staff did our best to identify all of the nonconformities and integrate those into the conditions. But it's the preliminary plat stage where we really see whether these projects are feasible. I can't phrase that enough for you in that. So the Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval of this request with several conditions and findings in your packet.
I think the day of the mom and pop resorts are coming to an end. There was an article in the Sunday paper of the very thing that's happening in other parts of the state where folks retire and the new folks want to have a broader view and a more up-to-date view of what people want, and so it's here. It's here in Cook County now. I live about a mile from Solbach, and it's part of my soul because we have so many meetings at the lodge, and not that that's going to change, but it's just the vision of seeing how that will change is, something that we all have to deal with. Change is kind of interesting to deal with, even though it's your neighbor. Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In thinking about Solbakken and potential partial or seasonal ownership, I think to other properties in the county that have gone that route, and in particular in Tofte, and that has been very, very successful. I was impressed with the discussion that the Planning Commission had. It was a very long discussion. The meeting was well over 2 hours. But I think that they brought up a lot of good questions, the examination of septic and well, water flow. There are a lot of aspects that they are looking very carefully at and talked about, and I'm just really appreciative of the time and effort that the applicant has taken and the conversations the applicant has had with David Howe, the former owner, and to look at that new vision. So I'm very supportive of this.
Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say that I appreciate the sequential process that gets to the hoped-for end. And it brings the scrutiny. A 2-hour discussion is a long discussion, but sometimes we need to commit to that investment of time to be sure that we're good stewards of the opportunities they have brought before us. And I would say that, again, the sequential nature of how we go about approving these things or not approving and brings credibility to that process, which is hugely important. And so I commend, again, the Planning Commission on their work on these things, and it certainly informs us, and I appreciate your narrative on the front end. The other thing we look at is when we talk about our shared values as a county and decisions that we make that align with those, one certainly is our tax base, property tax base. And while it doesn't take priority over environmental issues in some case and proximities relative to built-out neighborhoods and things, it is a component that encompasses all of the things we take in consideration. We're making a decision like this, so that's a good thing. With that, I would make a motion to approve the resolution for the conditional use permit to allow a commercial planned unit development for a resort conversion in accordance with the provisions of the Cook County Subdivision Ordinance, Section 710, and the Cook County Zoning Ordinance, Section 417B9.
I'll support that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move over to auditor. Revolving loan fund application.
And
You did that.
You did that.
Oh, sorry.
So the next item is to
Next
set is a request to set a public hearing date for a subordinate service district change. The motion would be to set a hearing date and time to hear comments regarding a proposed expansion of the Rosebush Hill Subordinate Service District. The current property owners in Rosebush Hill District would like to expand the district to include an additional 11 properties. The road section currently being serviced would not be affected by this change. The size of the district that benefits from the services would be enlarged. The property owners currently in the district are part of the ongoing discussions of subordinate service district and are aware that no decisions have been made on the future of these service districts. And the requester of this is back in, I believe, in Florida, so he's not here today to discuss this. I believe you have a map seeing where the proposed changes are. So I just wait for questions.
How soon would you need to have the meeting?
I think they'd like it as quick as possible, but which would be,
The
We
next
could do
board
it
meeting?
June 9th?
yeah.
June 9th?
And does that work with you getting into the newspaper?
Foundation
Yeah.
board meeting.
Okay.
but-
It does.
All right. So I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair, that we establish the public hearing for Tuesday, June 9th at 9 a.m.
I support that.
Any questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last item I have is first quarter general fund budget review. And as you can see, understand the first quarter, it is 25% of the budget, so that's basically what you're looking for. And the summary right now is 15% of our revenues have come in. As of the date of this making of the report, we've spent 20% of our revenues. So our net cost is right at the 25% at this moment. Usually not a lot of information in the first quarter because a lot of our big revenues do not come in until after March. And a lot of our expenses, again, are driven later in the year. A lot of our grants come in later. So I've made some, pointed out some of the larger discrepancies from the 25% and tried to answer them. I won't go through each one of those unless you have questions.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Brady. I guess, in reviewing this, I appreciate, again, your comments that you provide to help us understand when we look at figures and then say, what do those figures tell us? You provide a narrative that helps explain that. I guess from the standpoint of monitoring a budget first quarter, that looking at the comparables where we were, in 2025, where we are now, that's a comfort level, so to speak. I think the most important thing is the fact that the financial information is provided so we can analyze it, and that we're aware of things that we didn't anticipate or things that are changing significantly. That this is a representation of what our we'll call it lived experience is right now. But as we go into the 2027 budget, we look at this and we look at our trends over time, and we look at what's changing in the marketplace that affects what we do in 2027. So this is one of those components that's important for us to be mindful of, to see what we projected and how we're doing in that regard. But the component that's the unknown is shifts in revenue and what's happening, which is important in how we look at how we balance services we choose to provide and the resources we have to be able to do that. So I appreciate the report.
Yeah, and the second quarter provides, it makes a giant leap. in reviewing, because a lot of the revenues come in. Expenses should be pretty close
Yeah.
to the expected. And, but this gives you an update if there's anything really unusual going on.
And
Something
let's
that you
just say
wouldn't expect.
that if a funding source changes the way it allocates dollars, that we might look at this report and say, oh my goodness, compared to, the second quarter, we're really off. And then you'd say, well, that's because they no longer provide those funds at this point in time. So it's those kinds of things, so that when we see significant change, there's an explanation where that is. And oftentimes when we're trying to make projections, we can't do it because we don't have our final revenues. They come in after the fact, and it makes it difficult. Then we have to go based upon our projections, based upon what we know historically in this regard. Yeah.
So if there aren't any other questions, I just ask that the board approve receiving this report and accepting it.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to accept the report for the quarter one of 2026 general fund budget.
Support.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed unanimously. Next will be a report from Administrator Treble and the Tofte Transfer Station.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have the construction contract for the Tofte Transfer Station as the next agenda item. And so we're asking to approve the construction contract between Laboda Grading and Cook County for the work at the transfer station in Tofte. This is very similar, actually almost identical to the work that was conducted in Hovland. I will mention that our county attorney has reviewed the contract and does have some changes that we need to make to the contract, so we're asking for this recommendation upon review by our county attorney. I also have Director Brooke Lassard from our facilities team here, as well as Dustin Hansen from North Shore Waste, who can answer any questions. The estimate attached is approximately $93,000, and then again, you'll see the draft construction contract that needs, again, some updating by our county attorney. And with that, I'll see if Jean wants to walk through some of the changes to the contract.
Sure, with permission, Madam Chair. Thank you. So the changes, again, as Administrator Treble just stated, this is the form that was used for the Hovland Transfer Station. The changes for the Tofte Transfer Station would include that the invoices, just for practical assistance to the auditor's office, that those would be made no more frequently than monthly and paid within 30 days of receipt, as I don't think it's possible to turn it around in 10 days. There is some wording changes around paragraph 5 having to do with unforeseen conditions, in that the contractor is certifying or warranting that he is familiar with the area, is familiar with Cook County, has done excavation work and the type of work contemplated in this agreement within the county, and so that it's a little bit of an expansion as far as being reasonably unforeseeable circumstances that may arise and lead to change orders. Additionally, it doesn't require that the parties agree to any change orders if there are unforeseen conditions, so that we would have to agree, basically. It does have a notice requirement, so that the contractor would notify the county within 1 business day of such unexpected or unanticipated costs, and that work will not proceed unless the county accepts that change order, then, save for emergency weather conditions where the project would be damaged. Let's see, paragraph 7 expands the conformity requirement to be not just building codes and laws, but all statutes, rules, regulations. Paragraph 8 includes a reasonableness limitation to attorney's fees. And it changes the method by which the contractor can return to the site to retrieve materials that have not been paid for in the event that the contract is terminated. It just states that rather than having a license, the contractor will make reasonable arrangements with the county to enter the property, and that the county cannot unreasonably withhold that permission. There is no lien and foreclosure option because it is government property. And then there is provision for attorney's fees also to be collected by the county in the event of default by the contractor. And removal then of paragraph 9 as well, since there is no lien and foreclosure option.
Madam Chair, I'm also noticing on the first sentence, we need to update the address of the property. As mentioned, this was the contract that we used for Hovland, and it still states that address, so we'll update that for Tofte as well.
If I can, I would just note for everyone's knowledge that Dustin Hansen is here, and he's already spoken with the contractor who has agreed to these proposed changes.
Okay. Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. Those are important points. And I think that scrutiny, especially with workload, sometimes we think we've got a template and we use that template, but we don't apply it based upon what we've learned through experience and what we learned through just the grapevine of things that should be built into contracts for integrity. And I've said that when you're negotiating a contract, that is the time to make sure that we're protecting the citizens of the county and putting language so that we don't have surprises, because oftentimes we're excited about moving forward on things, and then when we do have a surprise, we have no recourse. So I really appreciate the integrity of adding these components. A question I would ask is there anything that we've learned from our previous experience out in Hovland that sort of fine-tuned this because we have that experience to inform this contract?
Just in regards to the contract?
Yeah. In other words, because it's an expenditure of money to do something that we did up there, what have we learned from there that might have refined it somewhat here, if that's a reasonable question?
I don't know that there was a lot to the contract. I appreciate Jeannie's work putting it through the ringer to make sure that we made the changes that were needed. She was working pretty late last night getting it done, and she finished it during the meeting today, so I appreciate that. Everything's ready to go.
Yeah.
In regards to the transfer stations, I think there are some things that we learned out in Hovland that we're going to make some changes in Tofte. One of the big things is we've learned that opening a 16-foot gate and 40-mile-an-hour winds doesn't work fantastic. So in the new one, we made some changes where the gates roll and things like that. But all in all, I think the residents of Hovland, appreciate what has been done out there, and I hope that in Tofte, it's the same as well. So.
And this all falls within what we projected in our budget to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. It's the same exact number that there was when we went for bonding, so.
Couple of comments that people appreciate the fact we can still put our trash in our, limited space in behind where the normally would drive in front of the county maintenance building.
Yeah, so the highway department was kind enough to let us use part of their parking lot to set up a temporary transfer station, which would be directly behind the current transfer station when we do the construction. So today is actually the last day that the Tofte transfer station will be open. Everything should, by this afternoon, should start being ripped down. The building is going to be starting to be worked on tomorrow, pour a slab, and we're going to try to get it done as quickly as possible. Our goal is a completion date around July 1st. There's a lot of circumstances, weather and so on and so forth, you can't necessarily always count on, but July 1st is our tentative completion date.
What happens to the little house that I worked so hard on getting there 2 years ago?
That's a great question, and I think
Are Somebody else?
I think we're gonna get it.
Probably, I
You're
think
gonna
Brooke
get
can
it.
answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, Neva put out an email to us in the highway department, and
Okay.
we could always use extra storage, so we're gonna
Okay.
take it and probably move it up by the old search and rescue building and utilize it for storage up there.
Okay. It works so hard to get a building besides a tent.
Can we have a
That
little
nobody can fit in.
history on that? Because what little building?
I'm not that familiar with it. It happened, I believe, 2 years ago. Tim purchased a small prefab storage unit, and they did some insulation, some electrical outfitting, and put a little space heater in it, and it was put out there for the attendant that works there, so.
It was for Brody to sit in, you know.
Yep.
When the
How
weather
kind
was
of you.
bad, and it's, I don't know.
What's
What
that?
is it, 6 by 8, is 6 by 10?
I think it's a little bigger than that,
Like
maybe.
8 by 12,
Yeah.
maybe
What do I
10 by
know?
12, yeah. It's just a portable, like you
It's
see on
portable.
skids, you know,
Yeah. You
for
see 'em
sale in front of the home center or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
One of those prefab ones, yep.
Thanks.
The next one will be a lot bigger, as you know.
Oh, much bigger. We
Administrative
rent it
terminal.
out for short-term overnight.
A VRBO rentals.
That's a good idea.
We're keeping it on the down low, though.
Oh, good.
So, Madam Chair, I need to publicly state that I've made a mistake. And actually, that first address is for the contractor, not for the location. So it is accurate, and I'm sure Attorney Peterson noticed that, but I just want to state that as well.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the construction contract between Boda Grading and Cook County, Minnesota for the Cook County Transfer Station at the Tofte site with the changes that County Attorney Peterson just provided.
And I will second that. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Go for it. Okay, so now we'll move on to administrator updates.
Actually, Madam Chair, I have one more agenda item, which is the proposal for professional services at the courthouse.
Okay.
Okay, so this is to approve the proposal for professional services for the Cook County Courthouse building, programming, security improvements, and feasibility study submitted on behalf of Architect Advantage and BKV team. I want to go back a little bit and explain the history of this project. So several years ago, we worked with BKV and with Architect Advantage to do a programming study of the courthouse, and we looked at making some changes to the space for security reasons, but also because we needed additional space for staffing for PHHS. So at that time, there was a proposal that perhaps we build an additional building by the community center, and also, again, make some security changes and updates to this facility. That was back in 2023 and 2024 is my understanding. During some of the time that Rowan Watkins, our MIS director, was the interim administrator, so he's here as well to walk through this agenda item. After that, when I started in my role, this board suggested that we dust off that prior study and look at it again because we had made some changes to this courthouse. We put some space in the basement, remodeled some space, so we had additional space for staff. And with some changes that have happened at PHHS, we no longer believe that we will have the increases to staffing that we did at the time that that study was done. So a few months ago, I brought forward a proposal from BKV and Architect Advantage to dust off that study and to look at it again and make some changes. In discussion with them and with some of the individuals on our team, Brooke, Rowan, Brady, and myself, and with some of our commissioners, we met with them several times and talked about the needs for this, for the courthouse. So let me just look at my notes here and make sure I'm not missing anything. So based on that, we decided that we thought there was a better approach. And that approach is looking at this space to see if we can continue to house everyone within the courthouse, not build an additional building, but instead remodel this space to fit everyone. We also met with the court. We met with the judge and some of district administrative team to look at what was in that prior study. And upon review, determined that we didn't need as much space as what was previously believed to be needed. Some of that is because court hearings have been changed to, a lot of hearings are now presumptively remote, and so they're not in person, and so the judge and the judge team are not here as often. We also didn't believe we needed, for an example, 2 holding cells, but instead moving to 1 holding cell. So we were able to make some changes to that prior study. So with those changes and those shifts, Architect Advantage came back with an updated look at what it would cost to do a complete remodel of this building. And so that's what you have attached in your packet, is a proposal for professional services to look at, can we remodel this courthouse and not move forward with asking for an additional building. The other piece that we also need to consider is the deferred maintenance for the courthouse. And so keeping that in mind too, we asked for the proposal to see what the cost would be. So the cost, let me scroll down to the total cost, is $47,500. And with that, they will take the information that they've collected through the previous meetings that they've had with staff and with our commissioners. And then they will come on site and we will host a workshop where we meet with all of the department directors to hear about their operational needs and their wants and their needs for their court space or their building space. And so we would have 6 different teams. And we're looking at, perhaps if this is approved today, moving forward with this on June 8th. And then from that, the information, they will put together an updated plan for us. We would have them come before this board to provide a project update sometime in July or August, and then we would hold a final workshop to finalize the diagrams for pricing. So our final deliverable would be the final feasibility study, and that we're hoping to get completed sometime around September or October. So it's a significant shift to what I had previously brought forward to all of you. The team, including myself that has been working on this, believe that this is the right approach, to not look at building an additional building, but to see if we can have our needs met within this current space. With that, there's a second piece attached to your documents, which is, Brooke will have to explain this a little bit more, but it's a CD scan of the building to help them with the study, to make sure that they're looking at the integrity of the space while they move forward with the study. So that is an estimated total of $13,910. So I'll pause there, if that's okay, Madam Chair, and ask if Brooke or Rowan have anything to add. Is that all right, Madam Chair? Okay.
I'll start, Rowan. I just wanted to touch base on the LiDAR scan for the 13,910. That was a request by BKV, and it's a new style scan where they scan every single room, and then they can pull exact dimensions off of it. You know, where light switches are, window dimensions, and it'll save us thousands of dollars from them sending architectural techs up and doing it the old-fashioned way with tape measures and everything like that. So that's the new way they're doing is with the LiDAR scan. And we found a small company out of Superior, Wisconsin, and I had both BKV and CRBPS, both engineering firms we've been kind of working with, look at the estimate, and both of them said it was very well priced and would save us thousands of dollars upon having them come up and do the measurements themselves.
I guess I just reemphasize the why, right? Administrator Treble mentioned the deferred maintenance that we have at this building. And so when you have that amount of work that needs to be done within a facility, having the conversation about, are there additional security needs that need to be met that haven't been met previously? Are there space needs, improvements that should be met while we have that kind of disruption and are making that kind of investment in this facility? And I think that's really what informs a lot of the conversations that Brooke and I and Administrator Treble have had about the layout of this building and whether or not we have the ability to house people here, and of course the cost. I mean, when we're looking at proposals for additional county buildings, the upfront and the long-term costs are something that really stand out. As part of our 27 budgeting process that we're in right now, we're going to be looking at adding the infrastructure just on the IT side for the changes that we made to this building for the basement, and significant changes in our budgeting for the expansion of the law enforcement center. And, you know, those are ongoing costs that we're going to have in place because of added building capacity. And so when you're, and I know Brooke thinks the same way about maintenance and maintaining buildings, and so when you're looking at the potential of another county building, a large county building, if there's a way to meet those security and space needs within this facility while addressing deferred maintenance that needs to be done anyways, that's something that made a lot of sense to me anyway.
Madam Chair, if I might just add one more item, which is the security needs are significant in this building. We are not up to best practices and standards in a lot of ways, and so those are issues that we need to address regardless of this study. So it's the deferred maintenance, it's the security needs. Like Rowan mentioned, the more buildings we have, the more cost there is for the county. And so if we can contain staff within this space and remodel it, I think long-term, it's going to be a much more fiscally responsible option for us.
Commissioner Gamble?
Madam Chair, I appreciate the background information on this. A question that maybe has been considered. Certainly, we've looked at different things, and this has been bouncing back and forth. And out of respect and appreciation for Administrator Treble coming in and trying to get a handle on this, is that let's just say that we say, yeah, this seems to be the right solution to our personnel needs and the safety needs and other issues. And so we do it, and then a year later, we're saying, oh my goodness, we really do need a new building, and we've invested all that money in it. I'm not one to propose that is what we should do, is build a new building, but I do say in the process of evaluating, we need to be sure that what informs this direction is thought in the context beyond just the immediate. I would say that, and I'm only bringing it up from the public standpoint that our decisions, we've looked at this and it is well informed, and we believe with what we know right now and what we project for the future, this is a solution that demonstrates meeting need and fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, if I may respond, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Gamble. That's why we are conducting or hoping to conduct the workshop, because I don't have all the answers, and I don't pretend to. I want to make sure that we're really collecting data and information from the directors on what the current needs are and what the future needs are for their teams. And then from that information, we'll get recommendations from the architects. So if they say, based on the information that we've collected from everyone, this is only going to meet your county's needs for the next 10 years or 15 years, then that's not a viable option for us. In the preliminary discussions that we've had with them, they do believe that this is likely the right approach, but that's why we go through this process of really collecting data to verify before we would bring it forward to you.
Continue.
Thank you. And as to the coming in and doing the work that we're going to pay $13,900 for,
Yep.
that it's a cost-saving measure, and it becomes more of a finite element of the process that defines space accurately. So that's well worth it. And as we go through this over years of time in experience, we find there's new ways of doing this that is more efficient, more exacting, and it cuts costs. So that's a good element. The one question I would have is that, so the $47,500 for the study and the $13,900, that comes out to $61,410. Where is that coming from?
I would envision it coming from the building fund.
Okay. And so the other thing that would be an interesting thing, although it's work, is when we've looked at the deferred maintenance on this building, it'd be nice to know what that number projected is. Not inflated, but projected on what we were looking. And I know that we were deferring some of these things because of budgetary issues, but they still exist.
Yep.
And so just knowing that number would be helpful too. So when we come out with our recommendation moving forward, we say we would have had to pay this anyway. Now we're addressing both need for space, security issues, and modernization, and all of those things. So it ends up being more of a win-win-win as opposed to, yeah.
Yep, and if we go this route, we'll go through the study, and if the space works out and everything, we want to move forward with it, then we'll send it off to the engineers that will then re-engineer all of our HVAC and plumbing and electrical, and there will be an additional cost to get the engineers involved, and then that's when we will incorporate our deferred maintenance list that is currently sits at, $9 million for this building.
Yeah.
And see what kind of cost savings we can get with incorporating it into the remodel.
And the other thing would be, it's a lot of stuff, but if it's synthesized so that from the standpoint of the public being able to understand,
Yep.
this moving component, looking at what we would invest in building a new building, and we looked at expanding the community center, we looked at, when the transportation, if that changes over, that down there, recycling, how that would be, and so, you just want to come out with the end of saying, boy, they did a really good job of walking through this and making a fiscally responsible decision, so. How much do we have in the building fund? Do you know?
I thought you might ask. $1,435,000.
All right. Thank you. So-
Madam Chair,
ahead. Yeah.
one more thing that I should mention is when we met with the 6th District Court staff, we did find out that they were successful in getting some funding from the legislature for security improvements to court facilities. So we've already mentioned we would like to be on the list to make sure that we're notified when those grant opportunities arise so that we can apply for some funding. It's not in terms of a building project, it's not a significant source of funding, but it is something. So we are looking at, what options do we have for resources as we move forward?
Okay. Any other thoughts? Commissioner Gamble?
Do we want this as one motion to approve both elements?
Yep.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I would make that motion and look forward to the discussions that we have with our departments to make sure that the direction we go reflects their input, so.
For sure.
So move to make the motion to approve the 47,500 and the 13,910 for the scanning.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments?
I remember the comment. I appreciate the fact that you put forward that when the engineers become involved, that there will be an additional cost, so we have a heads up that
Yep,
we're not
yep.
there will not be a perception of being scammed.
Right.
And I will again just reiterate that in the times that I interacted with the BKV group, I don't get any shady feelings from them at all. So I think we're in good hands.
Okay, Commissioner Gamble.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Brady, what funds our building fund?
The number 12?
What funds it, yeah,
Oh, what funds it?
Yeah.
The levy.
the levy.
Yeah, we've built that up over the years.
Okay.
We started putting some funds aside. We called them capital improvement plan, but we were spending them down. I'm talking a few years ago.
Yeah.
That we gave up at that moment, calling it the capital improvement plan for the future because we were spending it. But now we've taken care of a lot of those problems that were coming up year after year after year. So we maybe this is the year we start a long-term capital improvement fund.
Okay.
So-
And is there a policy that informs that contribution as it relates to the levy?
You mean in the past? Yeah. There's anticipated costs, and then we've lined it up. We've called it capital improvement plan, but we couldn't sustain it. But I think now we probably can. So you're going to see that as a line item, and you'll see it as probably a separate fund, unless enough things come up like this, that we start emptying it again, which was happening year after
Yeah.
year.
It'd just be interesting to see how we fund that. I mean, we've talked in some cases about funding, if we develop a
Yeah.
policy that's a percentage of whatever or not, which can get you in trouble when you
Right.
commit to a percentage, but I think there needs to be the discipline of contribution.
Yeah.
And, in my past experience, in a not-for-profit organization, because you
Sure.
don't file taxes, you don't have a depreciation line item, but you still need to treat your budget with the understanding you got to replace, there has to
And
be
where,
capital.
yeah, where that would come from would be our long-term financial plan. I mean, we started that, we've done that a couple of times with Ellers, and you kind of got to get to some stability to have that be something you can really look at and count on. But our plans have changed dramatically over the years.
Yeah.
So it's never come to anything that's stable enough to say, this is what we need each year. We've started throwing a couple $100,000 a year towards it, and we've cut back. So like this year, I think it was $200,000 total. We just called it building fund for 2026.
Yeah.
But I think we'll separate it again for 2027, at least start building up that fund. But we're not really going to know until I have a good idea of what are our long-term buildings. Until we get farther down on that plan and have a better sense of that.
Yeah.
It isn't like you know all the equipment you need for highway,
Yeah.
and then it's just planning it out. We don't know a lot of that.
It'd be
And we don't
interesting-
know the source, the revenue source that we've been counting on for a number of years with some of these larger plans was the 1% sales tax.
Yeah.
Because of the way that was written, we could continue to generate those funds and save them and use them, and that was a big part of our capital improvement plan. But depending on what we do here, what we do at the courthouse, you may actually have other uses for that. And so it's another huge part of that plan that's kind of in flux.
Yeah,
So-
and I think that it'd be important for us to have that discussion, to
Yeah.
look at in that big context, to say what are the funding mechanisms, because it's a reality, but the more that we can be creative and not make it totally levy dependent, or it would be beneficial, but
Yeah.
we should understand that and maybe understand from, other counties how they approach that, so that we can define that more clearly for us moving forward. But, yeah, I appreciate the discussion.
Administrator Trumbull?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Gamble. And in that, just to add to what Brady has already stated, is we have had some preliminary discussions about that 1% sales tax, and could that perhaps be used for this, and might require legislative change, given the language for that, but those are things that we're looking into as we move forward as well.
Yeah. And Madam Chair, and I think that the legislature would be open to that, because it's nothing that they have to come up with money for. They're just allowing us. So I do believe that that is a good strategy. Because they like to say yes to something.
Right. We'll see when the new ones arrive. Okay, anything else on this? Otherwise, thank you.
We have to
We
vote.
have a motion.
Oh, sorry. I think we'll have a motion.
We have a
second.
motion.
We have a motion
We
and
have
a
a
second.
motion and a second, so we
Now we
just
vote.
need to.
Okay, any further question? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passed unanimously. There you go.
Thank you.
Continue.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. And speaking of the legislature, for my update, I wanted to ensure that all of you are aware, as well as anyone who is listening from the community, that we had a pretty successful legislative session. We were able to secure $1 million for the Gunflint Trail Transportation Project. And so we're excited about that and now really focused on our federal funding as we move forward. The city of Grand Marais was able to secure $1.9 million for the wastewater treatment facility. So it wasn't their full ask, but they were successful in securing some funds. So that's great news for us as a county and for them at the city. And then AMC, the Association of Minnesota Counties, has been pushing forward, or was pushing forward, several different policy changes. And they sent us an update, and we've talked about several of them during these meetings in the past, but one of them is the technology system modernization for our public health and human services. And a $90 million total package was approved to be spread over the biennium with ongoing appropriations. So that's a big win for the state in terms of public health and human services. They also created a Health and Human Services Systems Modernization Fund, which will focus on the short and long term, including a mechanism to use surplus dollars to return new dollars to the fund. They also created a Human Service Advisory Council with AMC, the Association of Minnesota Counties, and MACSA, which is the Minnesota Association of County Social Service Administrators, as members, and a Legislative Commission on Modernization with the requirement for Minute agencies to consult the Advisory Council prior to spending funds. So in this area, this has been such a big need for public health and human services. It's a big win for us. They also approved approximately $10 million for counties in a new one-time administrative fund to offset the SNAP administrative requirements under H.R. 1. And there are a couple other items that were moved forward to assist in the health and human services area as well. They were not successful in all of their asks, but did make significant progress this year. So wanted to make sure that you were all aware of that. And then just to provide a really quick update on our building projects, the Grand Marais Transfer Station, we're hoping to complete that project the end of June or beginning of July. So that continues to move forward very nicely. And we are working on a date for a ribbon cutting. So I hope to get that to you. We're reaching out with Senator Hochschild and Representative Skraba to see if they can attend as well. So once we have dates from them, I'll move forward with getting a date for all of you. And then the Law Enforcement Center, work continues to go very smoothly. The sheetrock is going up. So that's a exciting, very exciting next step for that facility. No concerns whatsoever with our building projects. Again, everything is moving forward very nicely. That's it for today.
I recommend it not be a ribbon cutting, but a garbage bag cutting, something.
That's a good idea.
Thematic.
It'd be novel. Thank you, Administrator Treble. We can move on to Commissioner reports, meetings, updates. Commissioner White, do you have?
We did the legal training. Commissioner Sullivan and Commissioner Gamble were there.
And Commissioner Mills.
And Commissioner Mills. And that was helpful. That was good. A little tedious, but yeah, that was the biggie for me for that last time. Everyone went someplace for summer. I don't know where. Yeah.
Commissioner Gamble.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a request. I'd like to suggest that the EDA attend our June 9th board meeting with an update on the sale of the golf course, use of loaned funds to date, and any update on the Gunflint View lien loan payment. I think in making the loan that it's just good to have that follow through and that update, so we're following that.
Commissioner Gamble, did you want to talk about the HRA meeting?
That's all right.
Oh. All right.
I used up my words today in short
All right,
order.
so at the HRA meeting, they discussed the budgeting for 2027, talked about costs for Red Path to do their audit, and just the need for the Housing Trust Fund and what a difference that can potentially make for Cook County. We had a Cook County Coalition of Lake Association meeting, and there was a discussion Patty Craddock led regarding water sampling and how they're working with soil and water. There's not the resources in soil and water to do what they've done previously, but there's a lot of training on individual lakes to do the monitoring and then bring them here for pickup, so a common pickup site. And then they had breakout groups related to water quality, AIS mitigation, get the lead out, and surface water uses. Then we had our Cook County Historical Society meeting last week, and one of the concerns, which Director Brooke Lassard was made aware of, is additional issues with shingles blowing off. When we have some of these really high winds, they have continued to have issues, and they're really concerned about some of their collections and potential water damage. So I know he's on top of that and is working with Rhino Roofing and with GAF, who is the manufacturer of the shingles, to try to come to a conclusion on that. And then we had our Airport Advisory Commission last week. We got an update from the Minnesota Airports Conference, and we had talked a little bit about the FAA had planned nationwide to remove all the RCOs, which are those little remote communications buildings, by rural airports, and they said they were going to discontinue all of them, and the MnDOT Aeronautics went to bat for us, and all other rural airports, they will not be eliminating them in rural Minnesota. We also talked about our upcoming budget and CIP, and so our engineers will be working with Brady and with Brooke on June 5th, spending a whole day potentially together to kind of hammer out that budget and CIP. And then lastly, we talked a little bit about the potential of solar panels at the airport. This was brought up 4 or 5 years ago by Arrowhead Electric, but we are seeing that as airports are remodeling, that solar panels are being put in, sometimes over parking areas, sometimes on hillsides. So we'll probably go back to Arrowhead Electric and talk again about what is the potential, what are their needs for the future. Might the airport property be able to be helpful in meeting our energy needs, and then to also see how that incorporates into our master plan for the airport, because we do know we're going to need a lot of electric battery storage, and potentially could operate the airport off of solar panels. So we'll see where that discussion goes. And then had an opportunity to tour the transfer station and look at all the work that's being done there, and just really excited for the ribbon cutting, and this is going to be so good for our community. I'm just thrilled at the work. And lastly, today, if you're up the Gunflint Trail and you see a lot of emergency vehicles, it is the Gunflint Trail Volunteer Fire Department annual mock evacuation, and they'll be evacuating homes and cabins in the Loon Lake and Round Lake area. I'll be up there at 5 o'clock at the Fire Hall number 2 to look at the initial work that's being done, and then listen to kind of the feedback that's given once everybody returns. But it's a good time of year to remind property owners and cabin owners who are returning that this is an important activity. They need to be prepared. So with that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Last week I attended, as I have, the Arrowhead County meeting. We meet from September through May. And one of the decisions we made was that John Ungaro is retiring as our lobbyist. And so we aren't going to go forth with any other lobbyist, other than if there's an individual issue. A couple of the board members know of some people who would do a part-time one issue lobbying for us. So that's the route we're going to go now. And so we'll save lobbying fees. It's about $2,000 a month. So we'll be saving that money. And, you know, just going forth, like we discussed, there'll probably be several new senators and representatives that will need to be up to speed, hopefully not in our district. But we'll need to be up to speed with what's going on in northern Minnesota. So that's where we are with that. Saturday, I attended the Caribou Lake Association meeting, and they are just so diligent in trying to get rid of the rusty crayfish. They'll probably never get rid of it, but they're doing a lot of individual projects with their netting baskets going down by the end of the dock. You bring those up, and then what do you do with those after that? Well, you put them in a bag, put them in a freezer for 3 days, and that kills the rusty crayfish. So, or you have a feast, either way, you know. I've never tasted one, I don't know. I assume that they are deep fried and they taste crunchy and you don't even know you're eating a bug. Maybe. And then they also had discussions about evacuation, you know, for folks that live up there, and some fire-wise discussions. So I thought maybe later on, their next meeting is Labor Day weekend, and maybe I can have more information just for them to be aware and kind of reassured that they'll be taken care of. We have plans in the county. Emergency management always had plans, just that they kind of felt left out because they didn't know what they were. So we'll go over that in Labor Day weekend. Okay, yes.
Can we get a count on how many rusty crayfish that they gathered this year?
Last year, when they brought in the professional company to do that, they took out 1,300 pounds of crayfish. And individually, he really didn't have any specific number because everybody around the lake is, you know, doing it. But yeah, that's a lot. And, you know, one fellow was doing some research on lobster. How do you keep lobster from going where they shouldn't be going, like out in Maine and northeastern part of the United States? And it's a sound thing, acoustical sound, that keeps them from keeping on their journey. So he's talking to the DNR about that, because you can't put a concrete barrier at Bisbee Creek, and you can't put screens and all of that, but sound, and the apparatus would have whatever this decimal sound is, the actual piece would be on land, then there would be something going into this little creek. It's not very wide. And so he's pursuing that, and, you know, I don't know if rusty crayfish have ears or if they only go by their tentacles or whatever it is, but maybe by the September meeting we'll have a better report on it. But, you know, you do what you can do in terms of people cooperating on getting rid of as much as you can. Commissioner Gamble.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I hear that washing gravels tend to deter the proliferation of rusty crab. Yeah. So
Next we'll hear about that.
That's another good thing we
Pipeline.
didn't note. The other thing I'd say, John Ongaro, who, you know, has been serving the ERC for years, he's the administrator for the Northern Counties Coalition, so I think, you know, he still
He'll
has that,
continue with that as far as I know.
on his plate. And the other thing relative to solar panels, and I'm sure, you know, many people have, if you've been up to the Thunder Bay Airport, they significantly have a lot of solar panels that they use. And I can remember years ago when ARC, the Arrowhead Regional Corrections, was looking at using solar panels, and I recommend they talk to the people in Thunder Bay because they definitely have a field of them. But, yeah. The other thing that we may or may not be aware of is that there was a proposal in the state to bring some of the accountability and the under the Public Health and Human Services into the state. And I don't think that there's an appetite for it, but I think there's just an awareness of that as we're looking at it and how we would see that. I think it's like governance at the local level is the best thing. There are many things that we would like state or federal governments to do on our behalf, but I think that the accountability and the services rendered are best at the local level and not trying to bring them in-house like that. But if you want to allocate those dollars to the counties who do a better job, I would recommend that, so.
With our upcoming meetings to note, our next Board of Commissioner regular meeting is Tuesday, June 9th at 8:30. And then we have a correspondence memo from the HR Board on staffing changes. We have, by the month here, we have a couple of new hires, Margaret Martin in Land Service Specialists, which was started in April. Then we have Christian Wisniewski in Planning and Zoning Administrator. She'll start in June, I believe, probably it's June 1 there.
June 1st.
And then we have seasonal temporary hires just for the summer. So the AIS watercraft inspectors are going to be out there working. Wiley Thompson, Leroy Johnson, Nina McClure, and Shay Johnson. Also, we have mowers, Aaron Peterson and Brian Gallagher, and a highway shop intern, Kaya Erickson. And then we also do have a resignation from Behavioral Health Services Clinical Manager Sarah Dradswick, which was effective 5/11. And there being no other business, we are adjourned.
So we're meeting here at 3.